I go and do a little search, and I like to see the sentiment of what's happening within our community. And there's one story about you that keeps coming up that people, especially within our community, are not happy about. And I just want to know, is it true?
Okay, what's
and
that?
Is it clear? And it keeps reoccurring. So it was around about the riots, and it was, I don't know if it was a quote or a wider piece about many of the young people involved in last year's riots were from single-parent homes. And it was framed as single mothers not raising their children to not loot. And it keeps reoccurring, and people, constantly tweet about it. And I'm sure you must see some of it in some capacity, but there's something around that.
We live in an age of so much misinformation. It's terrible. The social media, and it's really important to understand that. And this is the conspiracy. There are right-wing groups with really good funding and money. There are foreign governments involved in some of this, and they deliberately stoke and put out misinformation and disinformation to sort of create chaos in a democracy. And the truth is, I am, as David Lammy, a senior and one of the most visible ethnic minority MPs, and actually now one of the most visible MPs, full stop, certainly in the opposition, there are reasons why they put out misinformation and stoke division, because it sort of undermines the British democratic system. And then some of the right-wing groups are deliberately trying to bring people like me down. That's their job, to create division. And so I've seen stuff on expenses comes up every time, and my expenses are, I haven't got personal expenses. I do have to fund the staff in my office to deal with the serious problems that exist in a community like Tottenham, but I don't have it, certainly not compared to other MPs. They raise, all sorts of things, and that's one of them. I was raised by a single mother. I talk about that with pride. The woman that raised me to be the man that I am today. My dad left us at 12. I don't have any bitterness towards my father, who's not with us either. The system broke him, and it breaks a lot of men. And I have raised issues of fatherhood in the black community and supporting black fathers, and the wonderful organisations that do support black fathers, particularly young black fathers who most often want to be there for their children, and the system sometimes conspires for them not to be, by the way. There's a lot of complexity to that story. It's not a simple story. I actually started the all-party group on fatherhood. So I did a wonderful documentary on Radio 4 on young black dads. So where I'm coming from on this issue is if you do the research, is well known. But if you're relying on social media, then you're going to come across all sorts of bizarre things.
I'm glad
the important thing to say is, in whose interest is this line coming? Because it ain't ours. It ain't ours.
That's interesting. My last quick question to you, it just flagged to me as you were speaking. It's really, really important. So there's been a lot of articles. Huffington Post was speaking about the disenfranchisement of the black community in relation to Labour Party, and they feel like political nomads. And in terms of one, I think there's two elements. One, what would your response be to those who feel like they have been disenfranchised by the Labour Party in the last few years? But more significantly, how would you characterise Keir's approach to leadership? Because the polls seem to have him a lot higher than anybody else, and I'm not sure if he's playing like a slight waiting game of not going into too many things and then waiting for an actual election to bite. I'm not sure what the strategy is, and some of the issues he seems to have fumbled around Black Lives Matter and a couple of other issues that really matter to us. How do you reconcile those two things? Because there's always a bit of a balance.
I think we've got to see the big picture here. We've now had we're now into the 11th year of a Conservative government. We lost the last election. The Labour lost it badly. We've got to win 124 seats just to have a majority of one. We've got to have a swing to win the next election bigger than the swing that Tony Blair got in 1997. This is a steep curve. And let's be clear, black people, when we say black people are tired, there's a lot of upset in black communities, and that's putting it gently. I always say to people say, "Oh, you're passionate, David Lammy." I said, whatever I'm saying is a sanitized version of what's being said in the black community. You go and spend some time in a barbershop in Tottenham to really know what's going on. So I'm saying upset, and I'm using a phrase gently, but the point is this: is because we have not felt empowered for well over a decade, and because we can sort of see no end in sight, right? I'm not sure that's any different if you went back to 1989, 1990, when Margaret Thatcher had been in power for a very, very long time. And boy, oh boy, I remember the Tottenham 3, I remember the poll tax riots, I remember the way black people were feeling at that point, right? It's similar. And so I would say I understand where that's coming from. But I would also say progressive forces are, generally speaking, where we have to be and in our political interests. Labour's got a big task under Keir Starmer. I think Keir represents someone that's serious, that's going to do the work. I'm very much enjoying working with him on the front line. He has a good track record when he was running the Crown Prosecution Service in this country of promoting black people and working with black people, like Wendy Williams. People don't know this, who did the review into Windrush. People don't know that. He hasn't even been running the Labour Party for a year. And a lot of the stuff he's picking up, I've got to say, was under the old leadership. So I think people have got to be, but this is a context that is Black Lives Matter and other things have really rattled and upset black communities. So am I going to say to black communities, I want to say I understand why you would give Keir Starmer and the Labour Party a hard time. And it's really important the Labour Party isn't complacent about black votes. All I would say is, please, if you're doing that, please, I want to see you giving the government as hard and more, because they are running the country. So I get worried about attacking your own, or, you know what I mean, and not keeping your eye on the who's really affecting your life. But I understand why that's the case. And in the end, in politics, if you can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen. So Keir has to stand the heat. I have to stand the heat. That's the nature of the job. I cannot expect the community and the meetings I've done over the years where I've had to go into a room and I've had to take some licks because black people in that room, they don't get to say this to Boris Johnson. So they're going to say it to me and hope that I might say it to Boris Johnson when I see him. I understand that. That's you got to be grown-ups about it. I'm happy to take some licks. I'm happy to hear what it is you feel, and to know that what it is you feel is very emotional for you, and you don't get to speak to power very often, and so you've got to direct those views at me or Diane Abbott or whoever it is, and there aren't many of us. So Dawn Butler, so I get that, but it's just to put it in some context, to say let's have this imbalance. The man's been in the job for less than a year. He's got a big task at a very tough time, and look at what these Conservatives are doing.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'll just quick one-word answer. Would there be any value in creating a black party specifically for the UK?
No.
I now want to follow up.
No, I mean, no, I'm not. No, because that would be, as my mum would say, damn stupidness. One, because we have a first past the post system that in the end is tough on the Greens and the Lib Dems, let alone some newbie come along. Look what happened when Chuka Umunna I'm joking. That former party. I'm sorry. Let's get real here.
Wow.
I'm sorry. It's self-evident, right? Where you got myself?